Are you trusting AI to run your business without even double checking if it's actually doing it right? In this video, I'm going to run through a few mistakes that I've made as an AI consultant, basically working with a lot of my clients, and as someone who's been running an executive assistant business for the last 7 years, where I've trained all of the executive assistants on AI, essentially also their horror stories of how they've basically been using AI in their day-to-day. Now, I have talked about how to use AI way back in December 2022 when ChatGPT just came out. So I have been doing this for 3.5 years at this point, where I've been teaching people how to get started with AI, how to implement AI, and essentially the last 3.5 years of my life has just been nerding out about this very topic. And with that said, that means I've also failed and experimented and failed again when it came to using AI. And the main problem is just blind trust. And it says it right there when it comes to using Claude, ChatGPT, or Gemini, that they always give you that warning of the AI can make mistakes. And the bigger problem in there is AI is confidently wrong and doesn't always tell you when it's starting to just guess something rather than verifying something. 3 very real examples that I've had this even in just the last 90 days. The first one is I launched this new service, or failed launching at this new service called Lead Reviver, where it would basically go through people's book calls from the last 3 to 5 years and essentially reach out to those people who booked a call but never became a client, right? Sounds a dream, sounds amazing. You don't have to do a lot of the effort of reaching out to them. And essentially how I built it was I had it research the person that they did a call with, grab the transcription of their calls, and essentially write an email reaching out of hey, you booked a call 2 years ago, 6 months ago, how are things going? Has anything changed in your business? Do you still need our services? So that seemed like a really, really smart idea at the time. And when I did that, I basically created a whole process for Claude to be able to follow. Now, I ran it on my own list, and I think I had close to 200 contacts basically for the last 3 to 5 years of essentially running my own business. And I ran the agent through it. I called the agent Abacus because always be closing, so ABC. And essentially Abacus ran through all of my contacts and did what it was supposed to do, but essentially overdid it. It was kind of like an overeager intern where it did go ahead and research the people that I had on my list. But because some of those people, their domains were off, or there just wasn't a lot of information about them online anymore, it just kind of made things up and filled in the gaps for those people. And essentially, I got about 100 emails written where it had data that just wasn't true about the person that I was about to send those emails with. So I had to double and triple check and quadruple check essentially all of the drafts in the emails, or I would say me, but also my assistant was the one mostly doing that part. But for her, she was just overwhelmed with how much Claude got wrong about a certain person. Even when we gave Claude information about their LinkedIn, basically their background, to be able to match that person correctly, it still made things up. Second example of just AI assuming things is I would often give it real data, right? And I would give it a goal. Now, when it came to the actual execution of the goal, it looked like it did it, but the more that I pressed on, so for this one, this was actually just cleaning up an old inbox that I had, where I had 1,000 emails in there because I would just haven't opened it forever, but it's still a business email, so I wanted to make sure that it was clean. And essentially, it just got so many things wrong when it was categorizing things, when it was putting things into a label, even after I gave it very specific instructions of where to go. And the biggest thing is there were things that as a human, I wouldn't have caught as a pattern or something that needed to be solved through. So instead of Claude asking me hey, what do we do with these emails? It just basically labeled all of them correctly. So then I had to go and undo everything else. And the third main thing that I can't really fault Claude as much is when it comes to a lot of the transcriptions of my meetings. For me, when I'm in meetings with my team, I do speak a mix of English and just Cebuano, or essentially the language of the city that I live in. And whenever it does that, whenever I'm talking to people in meetings, Claude essentially doesn't know when I'm doing that context switch. It just knows that there's some words that are garbled. And what ends up happening a lot of the time, because I do have a setup with Claude where it reads all of the transcriptions of the meetings that I've had in a day to make sure that it captures the things that I said I was going to do, it actually kept making my to-dos up to the point where I was like, what the heck is this? And it would point back into a meeting that I did. And I'm like, no, this is exactly what I meant here. So a lot of the time, again, Claude, when there's a gap, or AI, when there's a gap, it makes things up, or it makes mistakes basically, and it looks perfect. It looks like it didn't make any mistake, but it was because it's just confidently wrong. And a lot of the time when this happens to other people, it's because AI is just predicting, and it doesn't have the full context essentially of what it is that you do, essentially who you are, what you do, who you work with, essentially your own goals within your business. And a way to be able to avoid and to fix this at the same time as well is when you're thinking of making something faster with AI, of making things better with AI, is essentially the A in the BOSAI framework that I've created for people, where B is basically blueprinting your business, making sure that you've mapped it out. O is organizing all of your assets, your templates. The S is systematizing it to a way where it's easy to understand. And the A there is actually a sign where you are choosing what to delegate and what to automate. And essentially, what are the things that in that automate still needs a human in the loop? Now, a lot of people are finding this more and more where they've automated everything with AI, but they don't want to be the one checking the output of AI. They don't want to be the one actually making sure that AI did the work correctly. Just like how you wouldn't want to micromanage an intern to do what they're supposed to be doing. So that's why it's really important that as you're parsing through what are the things you want to have AI do, is you want to assess first. That's why you kind of assign which one actually makes sense that there is someone looking over, and which ones are just easier to trust with AI to be able to do over and over again. Another way that you can think of is if you are fully automating something, is you keep in mind that AI can go ahead and draft while a human essentially still reviews and double checks if it is correct. And whenever I'm teaching this to people, there's usually 5 rules I have them keep in mind. 1 is never send raw output. Again, always treat AI's output as your first draft. 2, verify numbers. Again, it will make things up, it'll make assumptions. Even when you actually give it a sheet to follow, it'll start filling out the gaps for the things that it doesn't know, assuming that essentially this is what you're asking for. 3, check if it sounds like you. The easiest trick I always do here is having a file. This is where essentially the O in BOSAI comes in, where you're organized all your files, your templates, your best practices, your best posts into one place. So then AI uses that as a reference point when it's doing the work that it's supposed to be doing. 4 is give it feedback. If you see something that's wrong, if you see something that just wasn't right, it is important to give AI that feedback. So then the next time it remembers it, and which brings me to 5, which is basically building it into the system. This is where you even ask AI itself to write it as its own SOP or standard operating procedure. So it remembers, it knows to skip this, and eventually build the check into the system, or it's part of its own SOP is to just run it through again to its own SOP at least once, just run it through another loop. So then it double, triple checks its own data before giving it to a human. And for you, where you're exploring how you can use AI inside of your business, your competitive advantage is just knowing that AI is wrong, but it is a tool to move yourself forward. And if this is something that you have been debating about, something you've been trying to wonder, how the heck do you add AI into your systems, you can go ahead and book a systems audit call with me, where in 30 minutes we'll go through essentially your foundation, your assets, and then you as a business owner, and how AI can fit in those 3, and essentially joining our waitlist of other founders who are diving into essentially the BOSAI process and implementing AI inside of their businesses. Now, if you guys like this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button right there. Comment below what are the ways that AI has made mistakes in your business. I would love to know. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of my videos every Thursday on how to grow your business, especially in the age of AI. And if you want to grow your career with AI, I do have a second channel right here for you, or you can check out the latest video right here. Hope you guys have an amazing and wonderful day, and with that, small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.